apology to the friend who announced the meeting. At the very outset, I would like to just beg apology to all of you. I am not prepared. I had not come here. I had come first to Germany after a meeting in Caracas, Venezuela. I came to my son in Germany, and when Mr. Gopal knew it, he asked me to come here. And without any reference, no book, nothing to consult, I am coming, and whatever I am speaking clearly from my memory. That's why my speech may disappoint you. You might have expected many things. Anyway, I am telling you about the history of the democratic movement in Nepal, about the Nepalese people's struggle, only one aspect of the problem. What I want to stress is that the whole history of Nepal's people's struggle shows one thing clearly. In every movement, unlike other countries in Nepal, other countries I mean, the neighboring countries of Nepal, like India, China and other places, where the struggle is the monopoly of the intellectuals or the elite class. In Nepal, most of the struggles have been participated by the entire people. That means the people take part in the movement takes ferocious stay, but when it concludes, people have no hand at all in its conclusion. That is the irony of our struggle. People struggle, they die, they make all sacrifices, but they can't decide. And the very thing is the history of Nepal for the last 300 or 400 years, of not more than 17 million. I say 17 million. The government statistics shows more than 20 million, including those from India who have settled in Nepal. But I think it's 17 million. In a small population of 17 million, there are more than 70 languages, one completely different from another, one not understandable to the other. And then, so this is the feature of Nepal. The main problem in Nepal is linguistic ethnicity, not racial ethnicity. This is the problem there. But anyway, now I will stress on my own subject. So in the beginning, very beginning, I would like to tell you that Nepal's history is the irony of the people taking part but no hand in conclusion. That happened right from the very beginning. For example, in the 16th century, there was, I am just citing one example, there was a conflict between two princes. After King Gyanendra Malla, whose name those who have come to Nepal might have heard it, then when he died, his two sons had a quern to the succession. The elder one was Sadasiv Malla, you needn't remember the name. The younger was Shiv Singh Malla. Then Sadasiv came to the throne, and his younger brother was struggling to get the throne, so he put him to jail. At that time, the people of Nepal, particularly in Kathmandu, not only the common people, even the tillers, the peasants, they revolted against the king, drove him away, just brought his younger brother, released from jail, and put on the throne. But everything afterwards was decided by the king, not by the people. This is the feature of Nepal from the very beginning. So then I will directly come now to the history of the Nepalese people's struggle. The modern phase of political history of Nepal, or the democratic struggle of Nepal, begins in 1940. I put it there. People also emphasize, probably Gopal knows it, that the first democratic movement of Nepal started from the time when, at the time of the Rana Prime Minister Bhim Shamsher, Prachanda Gorkha movement was there. But I don't take it as a democratic movement, because in Prachanda Gorkha, some young men revolted against the tyranny of the ruling class, the Ranas. Fighting against the tyranny itself is not democracy. What they wanted was to overthrow the military oligarchy of the Ranas and give power to the king. So I don't take it as the beginning of democratic struggle. Even in the rudimentary stage, the first democratic movement started in the Praja Parishad movement. In that movement, the Ranas suppressed the movement ruthlessly, and just executed, killed all the prominent leaders of the movement. That happened, that movement, in Nepalese time we say, that was in 1940.
They had secretly organized from 1937. In 1940, when it was revealed, all of them were killed, the main leading personals. But one feature of that movement, the Ranas arrested not only the leaders of the Praja Parishad movement, but even those, that is the irony of Nepal, even though the Nepal Bhasha, one of the languages of Nepal, Nepali language, which was the state language before the present Nepali language became the state language. After the establishment of Pratnan Shah's rule, that is the Gorkha dynasty, the new language has been called Nepali language and it became the state language. Before that, Newari, or it is also called Nepal Bhasha, Nepal language, that was the state language. All those who wrote poems in Newari, they were arrested on the charge that instead of writing in Nepali, they are writing in Newari. And they were put to jail. Some leading figures, those who have no hand in political movement at all, they were put to jail for life. That is the Ranas suppressed not only the democratic movement, they thought that all those intellectuals who don't obey to the rule of the government, those who have some independent stand or some free thinking, all of them were arrested. And one example, those who know about Nepal, they say the four great martyrs of the democratic movement in Nepal. We generally take the name of Sukraj Sastri, or Sukraj Joshi, his name. Sukraj Joshi, Gangalal, Dharmbhakta, and Dasrachan. Dasrachan was really the main hand in the Praja Parishad movement. He formed the Praja Parishad. And four of them were executed. So the historians also say the four were the leaders of the Praja Parishad movement. And foreigners also, they emphasize that these four people were the leaders. But Sukraj, who was executed, whom I think the greatest hero of the movement, was not at all connected with a political movement, with the Praja Parishad movement. When the Praja Parishad was formed, he was already in jail. And when Praja Parishad was suppressed, he was also killed. He was also executed by the Rana. On what charge? He did not speak of democracy. He did not speak of end of Rana regime. He was a religious preacher who preached, I am just quoting his preaching, he said he was a theist believing in God. He said, God is our Father who created all of us. That means all of us are brothers and sisters. So there should be complete equality among all. There can be no high caste and low caste, no Brahmins and untouchables. This is what he preached. The Ranas thought he is preaching equality of all. It means it is democracy. Equality is democracy. And so he killed, the Ranas hanged him also to death. But one thing, all other leaders, they were given capital punishment. The decision itself, the judgment itself was that they will be hanged to death or shot to death. About Sukraj, they gave an option. If he agrees to withdraw what he says, he will be put to jail for 6 years, just like Galileo of Italy. Or if he insists that what he is preaching is correct, he will be hanged to death. And the choice was given to him. He said, I have spoken the truth. Even if I am killed, the truth will remain. He didn't accept, he didn't agree to withdraw his words, and so he was killed. That means he is one of the greatest inspirers of the movement, although he was not in political movement directly. That was what happened in 1940. Now, my main point, that in 1940 also, they just preached, the leaders of Praja Parishad movement preached that the Rana oligarchy, that means at that time, the one family of the Ranas, Jang Bahadur Rana, killed all other military leaders and took all power in him, put the king into as a virtual prisoner. The king was there, the king was not abdicated, not thrown away, but he just controlled all the powers. And for 104 years that family ruled, which is called the Rana oligarchy in Nepal. So at that time, in Rana oligarchy, some young men who formed Praja Parishad movement, they just said the Rana regime should go and there should be a constitutional monarchy just in the form of the British Westminster system of government. Because we are close to India. In India there was British rule. We used to read history of England. And so we know something about democracy of England, not democracy of the Scandinavian countries or other Scandinavian countries or France. So we know only one thing. That is where romantically we said the king is there, so the Rana should go away and there should be a system of government of the British type. Some said like that. Some young men, they were inspired just by the October Revolution of Lenin. So they said the Rana should go away, they should be removed, and there should be a socialist government of the type of Soviet Union. They didn't even know that in the Soviet Union system of government there will be no king. But the king was siding with the people because he was also put into virtual prison by the Ranas. And so these people who said there should be a Soviet type of government, they were simply opposing the dictatorial rule or the oligarchical tyranny of the Ranas. They didn't know what type of system. That is why I said the Praja Parishad movement was a romantic movement, romantic heroism of those who fought against the tyranny. That's all. They had no clear concept about what sort of government should be there. Anyway, when they gave a call, the people were suffocated under the tyranny of the Ranas. So the whole population supported them. But they were not guided by any leadership, any principle. For example, I said, Professor Acharya, you might have heard the name, who had made the chairman of the organization. Although I said Dasrathan was the main organizer, he didn't himself become chairman, but put Professor as chairman. Professor, he used to study in India, and he was just influenced in Calcutta by the RSP there, Revolutionary Socialist Party. At present also the party is there in India. It's a small party. They believe in Marxism-Leninism, but they say that at that time, not now, during the time, Stalin is a dictator, not a Leninist. They believe in Marxism-Leninism, but oppose Stalin. That was a group. Anyway, they were against the British government, fighting against British colonialism for independence. So the Nepalese people, they thought they were inspired by them. Another person is there, Eminent, a very great political figure of India, who was a member of the international committee led by Lenin. Yes, somewhere his followers, all of them joined together. Those who believed in Lenin's rule, those who believed in RSP, and even there was, at present in India, there is an organization, the Hindu Nationalist Organization, BJP. In those days, these Hindu nationalists also, they believed that India is a Hindu state and the Britishers have colonized and destroyed all our culture, so they also were against the British rule. And somewhere in place, all of them joined together in that movement, movement. That's why I say they were all inspired by different ideologies from India. And that's why they could not assert, they could decide anything. Anyway, it was suppressed, all were killed. And after that, a very interesting incident happened. All were killed. The chairman, Professor, he was not executed. Because in the strict Hindu law, Brahmin, Brahmin, the priest, they cannot be killed. If the court gives them capital punishment, it will be written only in the judgment, but it will be a suspended judgment for life. The judgment will be there, but he will be put to jail for life. And Professor was there. Then he had one friend. Of course, if you are interested in detail about Nepal, I can take his name, Gyanendra Shrestha, and he is often called Gyanendra. He alone, he was the only person among hundreds of Praja Parishad people who escaped this arrest. He was arrested, and after investigation, he was left free, thinking that he had no role there. He was the only member who was spared. And then through him, Prasad just said that there should be a continuation of Praja Parishad movement. Otherwise, the Ranas will boast that we have suppressed all. And so he began to contact some persons, some new young men, to continue the Praja Parishad movement. And then they contacted a man named Prem Bahadur Kumsakar, who became very active later as one of the leaders of the Nepali cultural movement. In politics also, he was at one time the General Secretary of the Nepali Congress. That means Nepali Congress Party, which led the movement of 1950. So, with due apology, I would like to refer myself. She said that I am a very active participant in the 1990 movement for the establishment of democracy. I was really a member of the central resistance against the Panchayat regime for the establishment of democracy. But at that time I was paralyzed for 4 months and I was in hospital bed. That means I was only a member of the movement but not actually participating there. That happened in 1990. In 1960, of course, I was arrested. And in 1950, movement against the Ranas, I said about the Ranas movement. I was a young student of 18 and I was active in the student movement and I was put to jail at the time also. Anyway, I can claim that I have taken part in the 1950 movement, in 60 movement. In 1990 movement, I have no physical involvement there except my moral involvement. Anyway, and then he contacted Prem Bahadur Kamsakar and asked him to continue Praja Parishad. He said, if we organize again our activities in the name of Praja Parishad, the Ranas will think that some people are still there and they will come down to suppress with big more force. And that is why, anyway, there should be a democratic movement under a new name. So he organized a new party, Nepal Prajatantra Sangh, which literally means Nepal Democratic Association. And again, he, under his leadership, some very prominent political figures, only 6 or 7, but later they became very prominent in Nepalese history. Prem Bahadur Kamsakar, who became later General Secretary of Nepali Congress. Pushpa Lal Shrestha, who became the founder of the Communist Party of Nepal. Samburam Shrestha, the only living founder of the communist movement in Nepal. All others have died. He is 86 and he is still living. And then Kamaksha Devi, the first woman to come into democratic struggle. All of them formed one organization called Nepal Democratic Association, and then they began to preach against Rana rule. The family rule should go. That's all they said. They couldn't agree among themselves. Some said there should be constitutional monarchy. Some of them were on the side of democratic republicanism without the king. Their argument was that the Ranas are feudal rulers, king is also the biggest feudal institution. And some were communists. They all came together. That means they were joined only in one common bond, that is, revolt against the tyranny of the family rule. In that movement also, there was the sympathy of the entire Nepalese people. But that also was suppressed by the Ranas. The people had no hand in it. Let us drop it. Now we come to the main movements of Nepal. When we speak about Nepal, we speak of 2 great revolutions, democratic revolution. One is the revolution of 1950, in which the Ranas were overthrown. And parliamentary democracy was established in Nepal, multi-party democracy was established. For 10 years it functioned. And in 1960, King Mahendra, you know that, dissolved the parliamentary system and took all powers in his own hands. And after 30 years again, there was re-establishment of democratic movement, this multi-party democracy in 1990. So the 2 biggest movements in Nepal was in 1950 and 1990, at a distance of 40 years. In both movements, those who went to jail, even jail, were arrested, reached more than 10,000. And those who were killed were hundreds. So they were very big movements. But in both movements, what we find that the decision was not made by the people. People participated, many people died, but the decision was not made by the people. And let us come to 1950. In 1950 movement against the Rana regime, we find that the Rana system was overthrown. Those from outside who study the history of Nepal, they say the movement was brought to a close by Delhi compromise, a compromise in Delhi. Compromise among the 3 forces, the king, the Nepali Congress which led the movement, and the Rana rulers of Nepal. That is what is written in the Nepalese textbooks, in all history and everywhere. but I think it was not at all a compromise between the three forces, but an agreement between the Indian government, the newly independent Indian government led by Jawaharlal Nehru and the Rana rulers of Nepal. And I am just going to prove it. And I will just cite some of the lines, and for your reference I will put it here. Some speeches of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru to the Parliament of India. What happened, I am just explaining that time in bit detail, so 5 or 10 minutes I will just deal with it. There was a Rana regime. Peak of Rana regime, there was no protest. All these democratic protests had been suppressed. And at that time, the Britishers had to leave India and India became independent. Further Rana, there was a new threat from the democratic India. They thought that the democratic Indian government might support the democratic movement of Nepal against the Ranas. So the Rana, these military rulers, they were trying to appease the India government at any way. The common people, they thought that the democratic India will support our democratic movement, and said instead of standing on their own legs, they were looking to India for inspiration, for help, for guidance and everything. But the Indian rulers at that time, in the history of the world, you might hear the name of Jawaharlal Nehru as an anti-colonialist, a democrat, and everything. But in case of India, his face is completely different. So the two prime ministers of Nepal and India will meet from time to time and decide a common foreign policy and common defense policy. No defense arrangement. Now say it is reciprocal because the two will consult and they come. So please imagine it is like Aesop's fables, the story of the dwarf and the giant, all economic activities, including commerce and industry. Now if you come to Nepal, you need a visa. You can stay in Nepal for 3 months, but you cannot engage in any industry or anything. But Indians can do that. Of course, the same right is given to Nepal. But please imagine, Nepal has a population of 17 million, India has a population of how many? That is 1 Arab we say, that means 100 lakhs we say. That means it is 1,000 million. And even if the entire population of 17 million Nepalese go and come and stay in India, they will be drowned in the ocean. But if 50 million Indians come to Nepal, Nepal will be swept away by the English. The treaty is there. And not only that, another clause is there. So if some unfortunate incidents happen in Nepal, it will affect India. And if it happens in India, it affects Nepal. So if, please mind it, if some force uses military means to throw away or to overthrow the legally established government, another country can send its army to suppress it without being invited. The clause is still there. The Maoists are now fighting against the king's government to overthrow the government. India is watching it. India even tries to accelerate it, gives even help. Of course, I don't mean that the Maoists are puppets of India. They are independent people, they have their own philosophy, they are fighting. But India wants to boost it up so that there will be disturbance and they will get a chance to interfere. That is what they are doing. And then if they find that actually the present government of the king is going to be overthrown, then according to that treaty, India can send its army and suppress the Maoist movement. So, not to speak of the Maoists, we who fight are fighting for democracy, if we take arms, we should think of that situation. We should be prepared not only to fight against our government, but against the interference of the Indian government also. Only after such preparation we can take steps. That is what happened in 1950. Then after that, the Mohan Singh thought that after signing that treaty, now India will do nothing. And he thought that his regime is now stable. But India was not satisfied. India approached the king of Nepal, asked him to flee to India. King took asylum in India. And then the Nepali Congress, a democratic movement, then the Indians helped them and then asked them to take arms against the Rana regime. And then India, someone invited the Prime Minister of Nepal to come to India, saying that disturbances have happened in Nepal. The king has also left the country. So that is why something must be done. Otherwise, there will be trouble. The Prime Minister himself didn't go, but he sent two of one his brother and his son, General Keshu Shamsher and General Vijay Shamsher. And when they went there, I will quote one line. In December 6, 1950, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's speech to the Parliament of India, he said, "Ever since I have been associated with this government, I have taken a good deal of interest in Nepal. We have desired not only to continue our old friendship with that country, yes, which in the British days of India was an independent country called so." It means it is called independent but not actually independent, that is what he said. We stood not only for progressive democracy in our own country, I am not reading the whole thing, but round about our country also. We talked about it not only in Nepal but in distant parts of the world. And when our doorstep was concerned, if Nepal did not make some effort to keep pace to go in that direction, that means in the direction of democracy, there may be some pushing about later. But it was difficult for us because we didn't wish to interfere in Nepal. And now our interest in the internal conditions of Nepal have become still more acute and personal because of development across our borders, because of the development in China, to be very frank. Now, most of us think that there was a war between India and China in 1962. And India became alert against China and took all interest in Nepal. This is what the Indians explain. But it was in 1950 when Mao's government was established in China. Then he said, there is a communist government in China. It may affect Nepal. And so he took it as a pretext to interfere in Nepal. Openly in the parliament he said, because of developments across our borders, because of developments in China, to be frank. That means, and this is one thing, we are also interested in our country's security. Now we have had from immemorial times a magnificent frontier, the Himalayas, the mountain Himalayas. But so far as the Himalayas are concerned, they lie not only on our border, but lie on the other side of Nepal, not on our side. That is why our interest is that, much as we appreciate the independence of Nepal, we cannot risk our own security by anything going wrong in Nepal. So, now the present position has arisen, as the House knows, the King of Nepal is at present moment in Delhi, and two ministers are members of Nepalese government, Kesar Shamsher and Vijay Shamsher, are at present in Delhi, and we are having talks with them. And then, on the basis of 1950 talk, Prime Minister Nehru of India said that according to the Treaty of 1950, whenever there is any trouble in one of the country, the two Prime Ministers will consult from time to time and decide something. And then he suggested that in Nepal there should be a change. The change is that King Tribhuvan, who has left Nepal and taken asylum in India, and the Rana regime had put his grandson, the present King Gyanendra, he was 3 years old at that time, put the throne. So Gyanendra became 2 times prime king of Nepal. One as a puppet king of the Ranas, and now as a king who have taken power through royal coup, I should say, not military coup. That is what had happened. Then the Indians, he said that 3 things should be done. And then he said, they asked for my opinion, and I said that we should have 3, then he said, in the view of the Indian government, it is just a suggestion, he said, because they asked for advice. In the view of the Indian government, 3 things should be done. 1, a constituent assembly composed entirely of popularly elected members should be brought into being as soon as possible to draw up a constitution of Nepal. 2nd, pending the meeting of the Constituent Assembly, an interim government should be formed, which will include half the members from the old Rana regime and half from representatives of popular opinion. In the name of representatives of popular opinion also, he insists that Jawaharlal Nehru put all his puppets in the government. That happened in 1950. It means people fought against the Rana regime. The Rana was knelt down. They surrendered. But the change was made, as India has said, according to the roadmap of India government, not according to the decision of Nepal. That happened in 1950. Then, in 1960, King Mahendra, the king, who had all become powerful, he, after the death of his father, he ascended the throne. He did not at all elected the Constituent Assembly. Didn't do it. And so, there was no, his father promised that within 2 years there will be an election to Constituent Assembly, but that was not done. So that in 1957, all the parties of Nepal, from the extreme right to the communists, they joined together and just launched a so-called civil disobedience movement against the king, asking him to immediately call elections. He suggested that there will be an election to the parliament of the British type. He argued that even if there is an election of Constituent Assembly, the Constituent Assembly will draft a constitution of the British type. So instead of having two elections, let us have directly the election of the parliament, which will be all powerful. Then the mistake was, all the political parties agreed to it, except the Communist Party. That was also not because the communists were wiser than others, but because the Nepali Congress and other parties were advised by the Indian Congress to accept that. The Communist Party of Nepal was advised by the Indian Communist Party not to accept that. So, decision was made by our counterparts in India. And then, anyway, only one party opposed to it, so there was an election to the parliament. And a full-fledged parliamentary democracy was established in Nepal, elected. But after some years, the king used his army, dissolved the parliament, and took all powers in his own hand in 1960. And she said, I am an active participant in 1960 resistance. Actually speaking, all the political parties, they took arms against the government, the Communist as well as the Congress. Of course, I didn't belong to any political party. I was teaching constitutional law in the university at that time. So, the king's man just called me and asked me to sign, just issue a statement saying that what the king has done is constitutional and democratic. I signed. What the king did is completely constitutional because the constitution gives that right to the king. But it is not democratic because 10 million hands voted to form the parliament and one hand has just dilapidated it, destroyed it. It cannot be called democracy. It is constitutional but not democratic. The party leaders said it is unconstitutional and undemocratic. I said it is constitutional but undemocratic. I was also put to jail with them. Not actually to jail. There was a palace where his officer, the former Prime Minister, Manmohan Ali carried the former President. Nine of us were put in one place. I stayed with them for 4 years together. They stayed for 8 years. I was released after 4 years. Anyway, that is why I should say that I am also a participant there, but I didn't take part in that movement at all because on the very day the king just launched his coup, I was arrested and put to jail. That happened in 1960. Then, for 30 years, dear old, after 20 years, there was a student movement which forced the king, according to history, to declare a referendum. I think those who go to Nepal might know it. I am just going to discuss you one very interesting thing here. I don't still understand what is the mystery behind it. Some days before that, one person, a very prominent journalist, came to my place, rang the bell. When I saw somebody has come, I came to receive him. He was dead drunk, couldn't even walk, just, I think, torturing. Then he said, I am drunk, I will not come upstairs. I have simply come to check up on things. On the way, I met somebody named Radhesham. He said, I checked up with Radhesham, but he denied. Anyway, And he said that the king is very soon going to declare a royal declaration, just announcing referendum, in which the king will say whether the people choose simple reforms in the panchayat system or restoration of party system. I was stunned what happens. Then he belonged to the party of Professor Acharya, our former Prime Minister. I immediately telephoned him. Yes, he always speaks as nonsense and rebukes. But after some days, when the student movement reached the maximum peak and there was disturbance throughout the country, the king announced the same thing. It means the king was waiting to make some announcement for referendum. His purpose was to give legal sanctity to his system. Then he can say referendum has accepted minor reforms in the system and not restoration of parliamentary party system. That happened in 1936. So here also people took part in that movement. The king announced referendum, but again they were taken. Then in 1990, the biggest movement in Nepal, which is called Movement for Restoration of Parliamentary Democracy, which is called the biggest, we call it Jana Andolan, that is complete mass movement of Nepal. Actually the mass movement was there, hundreds and hundreds of people became martyrs, and throughout the country there was revolt against the panchayat rule of the king. That happened in 1990. In that movement, the greatest role was played by Ganesh Man Singh, one of the leaders of Nepali Congress. So we say 1960 movement was led by Nepali Congress, 1950 movement. 1990 movement, I say it is led, of course legally it is led by Nepali Congress, but I say led by one man, Ganesh Man Singh. And there also I am telling you something. If B.P. Koirala, the leader of Nepali Congress, was living at that time, I doubt whether that movement will come true or not, because he always wants monopoly of Nepali Congress. But Ganesh Man, he thought that unless all the political forces unite, the king's rule cannot be overthrown, or at least it cannot be brought to an end. And he contacted many persons. I said, at that time I was paralyzed for 4 months and I was lying on bed. He came to my place just to see a patient, also to say something. He said, please help me one thing. I am inviting all political parties to join my movement. That is why I should approach all. I should go to all of them. It is not possible for me, for an old man who cannot even walk. So I would like to summon all of them. If I call all of them to my place and ask them, it is something, it will be rude, impolite to call somebody or here. So he said, please arrange that all of them come to one place. I will come there and request them. I thought that the senior most leader of the, by senior most I mean not the biggest, greatest leader, but the most elderly leader of the communist movement was Tulsi Lal, who has now died. I requested Tulsi Lal. He called a meeting of all the communist forces. There were 12 groups among the communists. Ganesh Man also wanted help from the communists. All of them there in the Tea Party. Ganesh Manji came there. I also, Ganesh Manji took me, although I couldn't walk there. And there he requested all of them to support him. And one interesting event happened there, I will tell you. Some communist leaders said, we have always supported Nepali Congress against the king. In 1950, in 1960, in 1936, but you always compromise and betray us. So we have no faith in Nepali Congress. If other leaders of Nepali Congress were there, they would have become furious. But Ganesh Manji tactfully said, you have no faith in Nepali Congress? No. Then do you have faith in Ganesh Man personally? He said, yes, I believe in your words. Then he said, please take, it is not a call of Nepali Congress, but a call of Ganesh Man. I assure you that we shall fight to finish till this system goes away. Then they said, yes, then we shall support. But again there was a division among the communists. Some forces said, Nepali Congress and Ganesh Manji has decided to fight against panchayat system for the restoration of multi-party democracy and a parliamentary system. 7 groups of the communists supported it. 5 groups including the present Maoists, they said, we can support you to overthrow this regime. We can support you to restoration of the party system, but we don't support restoration of parliamentary democracy. But we believe in people's democracy, not in parliamentary democracy. They said, we believe in not a democracy of opposition of the Westminster type. We believe in democracy of, I don't know what they mean, democracy of cooperation of Mao type, they said. And then there was a division. Ganesh Man, instead of going to the division, he said, if there is a division, let there be two fronts. A united front of 7 parties, which supports our parliamentary call, and a united front of 5. Let the 7-party united front just join us in a coalition to fight against the regime, and let the united front of 5 parties support us from outside, only support for the overthrow of the system, not for the new one. That was agreed. Just see the irony. The communists were guided by a bourgeois party, as Indian language, to form their union and form their future. Anyway, there was a movement. Then at that time, I just asked for assurance. One line I said, it's very historical, so I'm saying. And Ganesh Manja, I said, do you think that this movement also will come to an end through compromise? Ganesh Manja said, yes, it will come to an end through compromise. The king will not be overthrown. We shall compromise with the king for the restoration of multi-party democracy. But one thing I assure you, I shall not compromise like 1950 compromise or 1960 compromise or that means 1980 compromise. But I shall not compromise until the party system of government and multi-party democracy is re-established. And what he did, there was a compromise in the palace. I think he should not be blamed. Now the communists are blaming Ganeshman that this time also he betrayed the people by through compromise with the king. He said from the very beginning that we shall compromise only with the restoration of the multi-party democracy. He did that. But in my main subject, I say, this time also all the people fought against the government, made enormous sacrifices, but it was decided through a compromise between the 7-party Communist Alliance, except the 5-party, 7-party Communist Alliance, then the Nepali Congress and the king. It means everything happens behind the curtain in Nepal. So our irony is people fight, people make sacrifices, but always the change is done by somebody else, not by the representatives of the people. This is the continuing irony of Nepal, recurring irony of Nepal from the very beginning, 16th century, even now. And the present problem also, the king took all power in his own hands. People are so much dissatisfied, you know that not a single, I can't say a single person because there might be some copies of the king, but 99% of the people of Nepal are against the present king. But still, he is going on, he is ruling, because all of them are not united, and those who are fighting, the 7-party alliance, the Maoist alliance, all of them, they also don't decide themselves. And one thing, and at the end, I would like to suggest that I said that in 1962, there was a war between India and China, but the Indians were apprehensive of China, and on that pretext, they were trying to interfere in Nepal right from 1950, I just saw. And at present also, many, especially here in Germany, or I don't know about Netherlands, or in England, people will think that the Maoists believe in Mao's philosophy. That is why probably the Chinese are supporting them. And it is the Chinese. But the whole history shows that it's not the Chinese, but the Indians who are propping them up. For instance, just yesterday or day before yesterday, you might have said, the UML, that is the United Marxist-Leninist Party, the biggest communist party in Nepal, who are not fighting, not taking arms, who believe, which the party believes in peaceful transition to communism. They call themselves communists, but virtually they are democratic socialists, social democrats of scroller type. Yes, but they have not changed their old name. So he went to India, called all topmost communist, these Maoist leaders, and met them in one place in India. That means he went and met the Indian Prime Minister, who arranged to call the Maoists and then met them. That means if the Indian government are actually against the Maoists, they would have arrested them when they have come to India. And they arrest many people also. They arrest and just hand over to Nepal in the name of extradition, just to show to the world that they are not supporting them. But I don't mean that it is the Maoists are working according to the directives of the Indian government. That's not my job. But Indians very often try to prop up the movement, put the king under some pressure and bargain with him. And if that fails, they will have pretext to interfere in Nepal. That is what they are doing, representing. So this is the main problem in Nepal. And before coming to Nepal, I'm just going to tell you one thing, which is completely outside the thing. I am a professor in Leiden University. My subject is not political science. That is why technically there might be some many errors in it. I have just, I should say, distinguished myself in 3 disciplines. I have 3 degrees, quite different. One is chemistry, another is English literature, and one is constitutional law. And in 3 subjects, in 1960 I was teaching constitutional law, now I am teaching English literature. Anyway, I am in the Leiden University, but I have retired more than 12 years ago, and I am there to teach history of European literature, and I am appointed there not as a member of the staff. You are appointed as a professor of Leiden University until we will have our own staff to teach that subject. Under such a clause I am there. Anyway, but my main thing is I am the Secretary General of Service for Unprivileged Section of Society. I am just introducing 1 or 2 lines about that organization. In Nepal, you know, a very powerful association, Nepal Lawyers Association, that is, we call it Bar Association of Nepal. I am a member there, and there is all members of, all lawyers, all advocates, senior advocates, even pleaders, they are members of the organization. And that organization has declared the king's present step as unconstitutional and dictatorial. That is why it has gained momentum, because there was a very big support from the legal section. Anyway, that is Bar Association, all lawyers are members. We have a small organization of lawyers, not a parallel body. We have an organization of lawyers who please to defend the cause of women particularly, for unprivileged people, without asking for fees. Because we feel that if a woman, even if she is a millionaire or multimillionaire, if she is ejected in Nepal, ejected out of home by her husband, she is as good as a pauper. She cannot even have lawyers to defend her case. And so lawyers who pledge to work for them without demanding fee, they can join our association. We have formed an association which has branches throughout the country and everywhere. We had some particularly women, but now we have expanded and we are taking the cause of Dalit, Dalit means the suppressed classes, and also Janajati we call it, that means other ethnic groups other than the ruling Brahmin Kshatriyas there, and their cases also, we say, and particularly we preach for the cause of rights of these people. And we just now believe that the more women take to the legal profession, their rights will be better safeguarded. So we are encouraging women to become lawyers. We just conduct many training classes just to produce as many women advocates as possible. That organization is there. There is called Service for Unprivileged Section of Society. And then, of course, you are all scholars, not businessmen, not industrialists. Anyway, for just publicity or something, telling this thing. And we are asking for help for this organization from people throughout Nepal and to other people also. If you have any chance, you can also recommend it to others. That's all. And now we come to questions and answers.
It's very interesting. And if you, I planned not to say that you were not a professor in political science because I was sure that nobody would notice, but well, you were, you said it yourself. Well, we have a nice mix of political scientists and anthropologists, so I'm curious about questions.
You started the speech by saying that Nepal is a very small country and it will put 17 million. I don't think it's a small country. No, 17 million I would consider probably a medium-sized country. Much more smaller countries that democratize. But I'll ask you a question because I think it is important. You have got this picture of what you call a small country, I call a medium small country of 17 million, which is, as you say, linguistically...
It is 27 million, I think, now.
17, not 70.
No.
17.
27 now.
Now the government says, but I believe in 17, so I put it in 17.
Okay, 17, but if it's even 27, that's certainly medium size. 17 or 27, it doesn't matter. Country which is also linguistically divided. That's the situation that you portray. And then on the other side, you have got this history of democratization, which seems to be a story of failed democratization and de-democratization. And the picture there you get is a self-contained elite that leads to democratization, comes into some sort of compromise, and then fails again to re-establish some sort of sustainable compromise. So the question that I have is, how is it possible actually that it's all the time, permanently, just a sort of elite that seems to be already probably knowing each other, being very much in Kathmandu, and that you have a country that is of 17, maybe even more, linguistically divided, that there is no such some sort of new constituency, if you like, some sort of new constituency for democratization, which comes completely from outside, maybe on the basis of a linguistic group, because that seems to be the problem. I don't know much about Nepalese politics apart from what Renske has written, and it's just this one small elite that knows each other, doesn't trust each other, fights each other, then comes into a compromise, and it comes into nothing. So how is it possible in such a big country?
Yes. I said Nepal is a small country. Our friend says that it's a medium-sized country. We call it a small country because of the geographical situation pressed between two big giants, China and India. China with 1,000 million, and India more than 1,000 million, and India 1,000 million, and we have 70 million. So that is why it's a dwarf country. That is what we say. And linguistically we are divided. But so far there has been no linguistic struggles. Because in Nepal there are 70 languages, I say. One language, the language which the king speaks, has been declared the state language. And so the main problem now, that a medium of education is in that language. He who speaks Nepali, the child of that family, can directly go to the school and study in his own language. But we Nevas, we should first of all learn an alien language, then only we can do. It's the problem of 67 languages. That is why we are not divided. All of us are now joined, only saying that there should be equality of all languages. That's all. There has so far been no linguistic classes. And now we are just preaching a new message to the people that our democratic struggle so far is a struggle against dictatorship. But even after establishment of democracy, if all communities, if all ethnic groups, I use the term ethnic, but it's not correct in Nepal because some of the groups are there, say Tamang, Gurung, Nagar, Rai, Limbu, they are all ethnic groups, racial groups. But there is, say, one major group, the Nevas of Kathmandu. They are not ethnic groups. All those who speak that language are called Nevas. They come from different races. Anyway, some are ethnic groups, some are linguistic groups. If all linguistic groups have no equality, so we say that in democracy also, the constituencies should be, now we have 205 constituencies in Nepal, geographical area. And everywhere is mixed. And the king has very cunningly made in such a way that no group is in majority in any of the constituency. Just for fear that they will demand right of that. For example, in my own case,
there was an election in Kathmandu, the first election for the Kathmandu Metropolitan City Board in 1957. I contested from Kathmandu. I said that Kathmandu, the people speak Nepali, not Nepali. So the official language of Kathmandu should be Nepali. I raised that slogan, I won the election, and I used that language as the medium of our official work. After 3 years, in 1960, when I was arrested, they again put Nepali as the official language, and it's still continuing. And after the re-establishment of democracy, the Kathmandu Municipal Board said it has already been decided in 1957, and they again brought Nepali. But the Supreme Court just ruled that Nepali is the official language according to our constitution, and so it should not be replaced. Anyway, this linguistic questions, dissatisfaction are just coming out. Now we say that if all the different constituencies in Nepal are based on linguistic groups, then they will, all of them will have their own representations there. So far, the different linguistic groups, they stay in one compact areas. And so, democracy should be inclusive democracy, parliamentary democracy, in which all the groups will have equal rights, and our slogan is linguistic autonomy in their own areas. In that way, democracy can function. But now our main problem is the establishment of democracy, not think which type of democracy will function. That will come later. Please,
Why did democracy fail at the end of 1950s? Why was there a coup? Why was democracy overthrown?
You mean in 1950 there was an establishment of democracy?
Yeah.
How did it fail?
Yeah, which developments came to that situation?
I said that. In 1950, what happened, I've already told you, there was a very big movement that is called the Revolution of 1950, we used the term. Because the entire people of Nepal fought against the Rana regime. The Rana rulers were there. What they did, India first of all secretly approached the king and asked him to come to Delhi. Then he fled to Delhi. He went there. The Ranas were aspirants, and what he did, he tried to bring his son. All the sons also had accompanied him. But there was one younger grandson, 3 years old, who was staying with his maternal uncle, the present King Gyanendra. Put him on phone, saying that the king's family have left the country, gone away, and only one person is there. We cannot stay without a guardian, so we are making king. That means virtually they have dismissed the king. And then political forces say the king has appointed him as prime minister, legally of course, because he comes through arms, but the king appoints him. And then a person who has been appointed prime minister by the king has no right to dismiss the king. But and so people just, when there was an appeal, the people, I should say, responded to the call of the king and actually fought against the Ranas. At that time, the Indian government gave some arms actually to Nepali Congress, which was working inside against the regime. And throughout the country, suddenly there was an armed revolt. Can you imagine that a party which has not been organizing or making any preparations for armed revolt, suddenly it can take arms against the government if the arms are not supplied by the Indians. But at that time, the Indians arrested many persons, saying that they have smuggled arms from India to Nepal and handed over them to that government also. That's so outside. Anyway, there was an armed revolt. All people took part in it. Then India, just invoking 1953 treaty, as I said, called the Prime Minister of Nepal and said, according to our treaty, if there is trouble in one country, the two Prime Ministers should come. From time to time, he sent his representative, and according to treaty, asked for advice. He gave an advice, 3-point advice, I just said, and changes were made according to that roadmap of Jawaharlal Nehru. It means people fought against the Rana regime, Ranas fell. The Rana regime toppled down, but the decision was made not as people wished, but as India has said. That is why I said every time we fight, we overthrow the tyrannical governments, but next change comes, not according to the wishes of the people or the wishes of the representatives of the people, but through some unseen hands. That is always having the irony.
Can I ask something about that? Because you're always talking about Indian influence, which is very interesting. But what about American influence at the moment? Because I know
Yes.
that Colin Powell visited
American
Nepal
influence.
and,
Indian influence is too apparent, so we always speak about the Indian influence. The Americans, they come to Nepal through the window of India. They support the Indians and then the Indians can do it. Without American support, Indians cannot do anything. And I think, the palace coup, the palace massacre 3 years ago, the king and his whole family were killed. And to the whole world it is just some news is spread that a crown prince, dead drunk, killed the king and all that. But everybody knows in Nepal, although nobody said. But some people, that it was done by the American commandos, and in the beginning, the Americans approached the crown prince and asked him to declare his father a lunatic and put him into asylum, not kill, and take powers in his hand. When he didn't accept, immediately there was that action, all were killed, and the king's brother was put into the throne. That is, so all unseen things they do. The Americans, they don't come openly, directly like the Indians. They just work underhand. And here, of course, she just said, I will tell you one interesting thing also. Just a minute. Just after, not after, just 2 years, I think it is a top secret thing, but I still am saying, just 2 years before the king's massacre, King Gyanendra, there is a long story, he just wanted to meet me, called me through some of my friends, royalist friends, and then I met him. I was stunned. As soon as I met him, the king said, you have come, please sit down. I sat down. We have no common meeting point at all, but to talk with you. He invited me to meet. And when I sat down, sir, we have nothing in common, no meeting point, what shall we say? And then instead of saying, agreeing with him, I said, no, Your Majesty, we have a meeting point. Politically, our views are different. But in defending our sovereignty and fighting against foreign interference, we have a common point. He said, thank you. And then he said, today I have called you not to discuss anything. I just want to give you a warning. I thought he is giving me a warning, but not that. He said, they are pouring down enormous money in Nepal and taking many people on their side. It is not in the interest of the Nepalese people. It is not good for the country. It is a threat to me and particularly to you. I don't know why he said to you. There is a danger for your own life. Please be alert. Just to tell it, I have called you. And then he said, wow. I didn't say anything. That means he called me and gave this warning. He might have invited many people secretly. He was apprehensive that something was going to happen. After 2 years, it happened. And then even I asked him, Your Majesty, they, what do you mean by they? Who are they? He said, please don't compel me to call my name. You try to understand yourself. They are spreading money. He said like that. It means some foreign force was working behind, and then when nothing happened, according to their wishes, then they overthrew the whole thing. And I said USA simply because in many places the CIA, they are even killing their own allies, just like in South Korea and South Vietnam in the past. Whenever somebody don't actually work according to the thing, they do it. The same thing India is doing. Why was there 1960 coup of the king? There was a Nepali Congress government, elected government of P.P. Bharata, which was completely pro-Indian. They work according to the wishes of the Indian government. But sometimes they assert their independence, which is not tolerable to India. India wants to make a complete puppet like the Bhutanese government. And when the elected Nepali Congress government of Nepal, they dance to their tune, then the Indian government, Jawaharlal Nehru especially, just hinted to the king that if he takes some action, they will keep silent. Then the king could do it. He could venture to do it. Then Nepali Congress took arms. The Indians supported them. But after some time, they said, because the Chinese threat has come, you should stop all movement. And the Indians put a brake to the moving car, and then it came to an end. That is why I said yes.
What do you think is the way out of the current situation? There's quite a complex situation going on in Nepal. What's the way out? Is there a way out?
Way out. Way out, of course, is actually the work of what these political parties. And what I suggest to them is that even if they have no ready-made formula, they should resolve themselves to act independently, not always look to the support of some foreign forces or others. Let them believe in the people. The people are behind them. And at present you find the 7 parties are launching movement against the king.
But there were 11 governments in 10
The
years.
7 parties are fighting against the king. You will find in the demonstration there are very few people, no people coming. But in the name of the civil society, some doctors and engineers called a movement against the king. There were millions of people behind there. It means people are not satisfied with the king. They want to fight against the king, but don't trust the present leaders, because saying that they will again compromise. So this is resolve and give assurance to the people that they will work according to the wishes of the people. Then all of them can unite and bring out some way out. That is the irony. As I said, the people have always been cheated, and so they are always skeptic.
Maybe shortly related to that, if you say that throughout Nepalese history, people have been opposing dictatorship, the Rana regime, and all dictatorial regimes, but decisions were always made by the elite in the end. But then, if you have a country that is so divided linguistically and caste-wise and class-wise, how do you establish exactly that the people actually oppose a regime? Is it not that some groups oppose a regime and others don't, or that fighters and mobilization against the regime has a caste bias, that it's Brahmins or Kshatriyas rather than Dalits that oppose the regime? Or how can you so easily say that the people of Nepal oppose the regime?
No, now I can say that our present problem, the first phase of our movement is against dictatorship, establishment democracy. I don't just assure you that even after the overthrow of king's autocracy, even if the king himself is not overthrown, if the king's autocracy is gone and democracy is there, our problems will not be solved, because there is the linguistic differentiation and all these things are there. But in a democratic atmosphere, even in limited democracy of the British type or Indian type, we will have right to organize for the interest of the different linguistic groups, organize for just, I should say, safeguarding our culture, advancing our interests. And the second phase of the movement, complete democracy, ethnic democracy I should say, equality of all the groups, and then the second phase will begin and we can reach some conclusion then.
You said something about your movement, your association, your bar association, and the cooperation between the lawyers, and especially I think the advocates and the pleaders. Does this bar association invite the support of international human rights movements like Asia Watch?
Yes. In international human rights movement, very recently, this OSCR, that is the Office of the International Human Rights, UN Human Rights Committee, has been established in Nepal, and they are also working. At the same time, there is one organization, I should say, agency of the government itself, the king appoints it. There is National Human Rights Commission. National Human Rights Commission also, it is now headed by the former Chief Justice, and the other members are also very prominent members of, just to show to the world, although no power is given to them, the king has appointed somebody there. That National Human Rights Organization is also from time to time just issuing statements that the state is just, the state is suppressing human rights of the people. And that has also helped the movement of the people, particularly in the press. The government has now gagged all the press. Just brought a new press act, which has just, I should say, taken away all the rights of the press. Then the Bar Association came in the front to speak on behalf of the press, to the press. And it has given them a great impetus to the press movement. And then also the human rights organizations of Nepal, even the State Human Rights Commission and the International Human Rights Commission, they also, all of them, as opposed to stay with the king. And that is why I say the king has been put in a corner. And recently you find the foreign minister of Nepal went to Russia. And then they came back and then gave a statement that Russia has supported the king's stay. But when we read the joint statement, there is no word of support at all. Of course, Russia has not contradicted it at all. So anyway, three countries, Russia, China and Pakistan. Pakistan has openly supported the king's stay. China and Russia have not yet spoken against the king. All other countries of the West, India, then the European Commission, England and USA, all of them has opposed the king's step as dictatorial, and particularly USA has said if the king insists in his dictatorial state, the constitutional political parties of Nepal will have no other alternative but to join hands with the Maoists, and it will be a greater problem for Nepal. Last month, I think 2 months ago, David Camp, I think the Assistant Secretary of State of the United States, he gave a very interesting statement. He said that if we are in a fix, great dilemma, if we don't help the king with arms to fight against the Maoists will capture the government in 6 months and establish a totalitarian state, a dictatorial state like that of Cambodia, which will be a great danger for the whole region. But if we help the king, he will use that help not to fight against the Maoists, but to suppress the people's rights. So we are in a position where we cannot decide what to do, he said. And now they are saying that they have stuck all ears to the king and said that they will again restart giving it if the king agrees to establish democracy. But they explain that this is the way, if there is a democracy, the king will come in coalition, or I should say alliance, with the democratic forces, and the Maoists will be isolated. Otherwise, the Democrats will join the Maoists to isolate the king, and that will be a greater danger for the United States. That is what they are thinking.
Can you say a little bit more about Maoists? Because if you read American media and the political scientists, they portray the Maoists as robbers and killers and so on. And if you read the English media, it's much more...
in Nepal, particularly, about the Maoists.
But they portray it more like it has also... Well, the Maoists can also be seen as a part of civil society. They build healthcare, they provide education and so on.
Yeah.
So how to see this? How to...
Yes, certainly. About the Maoists, the clear picture has not come out. At particular, my own experience, I'm saying, I am just saying the Secretary General of Service for Unprivileged Section of Society. At present, for the last 1 year, they have established their people's government in many places. Now, 3/4 of the country is already controlled by the Maoists. There is a danger now. But till 1 year back, when we go to areas where they have not actually declared their own government, but they are very active, and no other political party is allowed to go there and just function. But we, in the name of Service for Unprivileged Section of Society, go to train women on their democratic rights. The Maoists don't stop us. They don't come out. But we find that in the women's class, the Maoist women also come there. In one place I found while I was lecturing, 2 Maoists came with guns, didn't say anything, stayed there for 3 days, and then went away without saying anything. That means they are watching. That is why Maoists are not actually as theoretical as it is reported, but their way, using force to those who don't agree with them, it is undemocratic. It is clear. That is wrong. But they are not as much as these
I have no political viewpoint myself regarding the king, but if you look to the situation in Nepal just before the king took over, in 10 years there were 11 governments. There was a lot of corruption.
Yes.
There's no education. People have in Nepal, in the 25% of the women in Nepal in the Himalayas can read. So it's not that the democracy is kind of mantra like, you know, if there's democracy then everything is fine, and if the king is away, you know, he's the bad man. But I think it's not understandable.
I agree with you because
And the Maoists, they NGOs, they cannot go there anymore because they kill people, they cut off their limbs, and it is not a story from CIA or something. It's just like Dutch people going there, and you know, I witnessed a lot of misery in the Himalayas, which was never there. So it's very frustrating. You know?
They are barbarous, no doubt. They have cut the limbs of the people also, persons.
I don't say that the other side don't, but
Yes,
you
yes.
know, it's
The
not.
Maoists have done
There
that
are no
also.
good and bad guys. You know.
To your question, I'm just answering you. I agree with you that for 10 years there has been such a big corruption. All political parties which went to the government power, they were corrupted. And 30 years of king's government was also equally corrupt. The present king, he is just gone to the extent of corruption more than the 10 parties. There is a competition of corruption. That is why people don't believe the king, don't believe the party. That is our problem. And about the Maoists, Maoists are barbarous. They even cut the limbs. But so far we find they have cut the limbs of the feudal people. They have cut the limbs even of persons who have become, to some extent, the exploiters as they call. But they have gone to such an extent that you can simply arrest one person, just explain to him and leave. But instead of that, they cut the head. But they are not cutting the head of the lowest of people. That's one thing. But of course, I will cite one example. Once, some army were coming in one place, the state army. The Maoists fled when the army came. Then the army people went, there was a barber in the street, just shaving. The army said, do you find such people? Which way they went? He came and said they went this way. The army went there, then shot them to death, 4 Maoists there. Then the Maoist came, that he's an informant. Actually he has informed, but he was not a spy, not an intelligence. When the army said, because of these, he was afraid of the army, I might have said like, they not only killed them, they cut him to pieces. So such extreme torture, extreme barbarism the Maoists have shown, but the Maoists are not actually doing as this thing. Now the people say the Maoists are equally barbarous, but the army has done more than that. Because the army goes to a village and they say, yesterday the Maoists came here, you didn't stop them, then they just fire all of them. The army in Nepal, probably it might be according to the wishes of the king himself, or might be their own extremity, that's another thing. But because of the extreme tyranny of the army, in many places people say, from a frying pan to a fire, but the Maoists are lesser barbarous than the army. That is what they are thinking. Anyway, their way of, and common men say, even the US said, the Maoist demands, 17 demands, they are correct and we even agree with them, but their way of taking arms is wrong. That is what the people say there.
But dit understand wel dat in West situation still no treaty India and Nepal was held, unless several governments several thrown over after the revolutions, that still the old treaty text politically is in force.
No, like the treaty is still in force.
But India, but on the other hand, also the Chinese are jumping in from the north. They're building roads.
Yeah.
They're offering help. They have offered also to the king. They say, okay, if you have problems, please, we are pleased to help you.
The one reason why the USA took such a step against the King Gyanendra is because of China also. King Gyanendra, I'll tell you, King Gyanendra went to China just 5 months before his marriage, killing. And then the Chinese, as I know from the Chinese sources itself, it was not well published, the Chinese then suggested to him that we can cooperate by agreeing to one point. They said we are now opening free access of the Chinese citizens to go to foreign countries. Previously they were not allowing all. But we shall do one thing, we should keep vigilance against them. That's why our slogan is first destination Nepal. All Chinese who would like to go to foreign country, they should come to Nepal, and from Nepal they will fly. And in that case, we will have only one place where we should be there, we can put all our people. That is one advantage for China. For Nepal, if all Chinese who want to go to foreign countries should pass through Nepal, then there will be a big flock of Chinese tourists here. And this, I mean, one attraction they gave to the king. And then they said that all people cannot come by air. The lesser rich people, they should come by road. And there is only one road joining Nepal, Kathmandu with China. So there should be 5 other roads. One is in Viratnagar, one in Pokhara, they suggested we will build roads. The king agreed, without consulting his government or anybody. He thought that King Gyanendra, as I know him, I met him twice. I met his father, Mahendra, also twice. And for pre-one, with present king's grandfather, I had a very long discussion with him, but I have not met this king at all. Those people. So King Gyanendra, he is a pure. People say he is more liberal than the present king. He is not liberal, he is not democratic. But he is fiercely nationalistic. And whenever there is some pressure from one country, so because being dissatisfied with the pressure from India, he sided with China. And then he agreed with what the Chinese said. This was something intolerable for USA. And then USA, either themselves or through India, have done that. That is my view.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
I have some questions for you, and I hope really that you will use them, because Shrestha has written a biography on you, but it is in Newari and you cannot read that. So I hope you can use this presence to write about all your experiences in English, and that we can all read it. And this is to, well, during your, you can use it. So thank you all, and please take some news with you, because, and thank you for listening.